Hello, I'm Jack Bradshaw, and this is the tier list tier iceberg tier list, the final iceberg and tier list video of all the iceberg and tier list videos. This iceberg tier list chronicles the best tier list of tiers. Tier list. I'm also joined by the t-shirt, the tier list tier t-shirt, iceberg. This is part 1 of a YouTube series I'm starting called MMA, Meta Modern Artistry, or your favourite ambiguously right-wing podcaster's favourite topic to kill dead air. Tier lists and icebergs have long been the content slop, the oil in the factory of YouTube, if you will, churning on, churning to produce more and more slop for the piggies. However, I feel like I've found a way to end it. Introducing the tier list iceberg tier list. Let's start at S above the iceberg tier list. In S above the iceberg tier, I see this as a sort of normie pick. The S and the E on this one, they're in S tier. You know, extremes. You know, sometimes the best tiers are the one that give the audience more to chew on. Where the A tier here has a sort of A tier, B tier. So the stuff that's kind of alright is an A tier, you know, the non-opinion kind of opinion. C tier is in B tier here, and D tier, it's kind of at the bottom, but we don't really not like anything, because if we had too much of an opinion on something, that could drive away some of the viewers. We don't want too much of an opinion on things. Do we, reactor? In the S tier, or above the iceberg, we have more of the normie picks, more of the engagement picks, the moist critical opinion, if you will. You see the E and the S are both in S tier. You know, we like giving opinions, we like giving the audience something to work with, something to gauge, something to be parasocial about. You see here the A tier is an A tier on this one. They like using the one below S as a sort of, it's good, right? Anything below that is sort of E. We sort of don't care about it. You usually see most icebergs that kind of have this format. It's a bit of a low effort tier list. That's why it's at the top of the iceberg, because I think a lot of tier lists are inherently low effort. You know, so anything that's in the sort of, you know, the B, the C, the D, it's going to have less thought put into it. So for me, that's an E tier. If we're putting things in, you know, B, D, while having the extreme, it doesn't really mean, I'm not explaining this one. This one doesn't mean anything. This should just make sense. All of this should just make sense. You should just know what I'm talking about, is the thing with this. I shouldn't have to explain this. This should just click instantly and make sense. Explain. So here, I'm subscribing empirical values to the tiers of a tier list and explaining a general tier list for the audience who have never seen a tier list before. Up at the top, we have oxygen and food. You'll see as we go down the list, the things on the far right are kind of subjective. I'm not going to explain subjectivity in this video. Maybe I'll do that in another video. So on the left over there you have oxygen. You know, you can't really live without oxygen. I've been trying to make an argument to why oxygen's bad. It can start fires. But I wouldn't be able to make this video without the oxygen. So thank you. Where over on the right we have food. And you know, the reason it's in the S tier and it's subjective is because, you know, you can fast, you can do a hunger strike, but you know, food, you still need food at the end of the day. Just as when you move down into A tier, you have 4G, you know, objectively a good thing, like you can text people, you can go on TikTok and go on YouTube and watch tier list and iceberg videos. And then on the more subjective side, you have recording artist Bob Dylan, who, you know, you can understand why he's in the A tier because, you know, he did a lot for music and everything, and you can say that you hate Bob Dylan, but you can't deny his success.
I want a dog that's going to collect and clean my bath, return my cigarette, and...
Now, moving down to B tier, this is where you've got to do a little bit more explaining because you're entering the mids. Where S and A are the high, the good things, sometimes the great things. You know, I'd describe A as a sort of, you know, it's good. You can make an argument against it, and I acknowledge that, but it's good. I like it. I feel like sometimes A is the more honest S, in a way. It's the poor man's S, you know, everything in S is so certain and definite. A is it sort of feels like more of an opinion to me, you know, because you know you're going to get judgment when you put something in A. Like, I know I'm going to be judged for my A picks, and I don't think there can ever be a perfect A pick. Well, there can be a perfect S pick. And I'll show that when I move on to the further tier list explanations. But like I was saying, when you move down into the mids, the Bs and the Cs, we don't do Fs here. You get to this sort of very subjective place. However, I feel like the explanations that I'm bringing can really help an audience understand the mids better. So, in B tier here, the good side of mid, you know, the side of mid, we have service stations and Fortnite. So, with Fortnite, no one's really raving about it nowadays. No one's really saying it's the best thing ever. And if you look back, you go, wow, it wasn't that great, but we had fun. And if a friend calls you up and goes, oh, do you want to play Fortnite? You're going to be excited to talk to that friend. And Fortnite's just going to be the thing that helps you do that. It's going to be the thing that helps you reconnect with that friend. Then on the left side here, we have service stations. So on the left side here we have service stations. Thank you, Clicker, for helping me out. Wow, that really threw me off. I'm going to keep going. On the left side here you have service stations. You know, you're not going to purposely get a car and drive to a service station. No one loves service stations that much. But if you're in a car on a long drive and you arrive at a service station, you're going to, thank God, I'm at a service station, you know, a little bit of rest, a little bit of respite. But like I said, you're not going to go out of your way to do these things. You're not going to go out of your way to consume the media that might be in this tier. Or like a character that's in this tier, a little foreshadowing there. But if it's there and if it's happening, you're not going to be mad about it in any way. Then when we move into C, down here, what I like to describe as the lower mids, we get very subjective. You know, it's hard to really pin something down on the mids, but again, I feel like I've got something. The shopping basket, the humble shopping basket, it's better than carrying with your hands. It's better than, you know, feeling freezer food, but you really want a trolley, no matter, or a shopping basket with wheels for lighter loads. The classic shopping basket is a little bit outdated, just like With or Without You by U2, but we'll get to that. So it kind of finds itself in the lower mids because you would choose something else, and it's not great, is the headline of the lower mids. And then we move on to With or Without You by U2. You know, it's going to play, and you're going to listen to it, but you're not going to be over the moon, overjoyed when listening to it. You're just going to sort of be like, oh, this song, okay. I think C is more of a representation of the true mid than the B, in my opinion. Or you could look at it the other way, and you can use it in both ways. But yeah, that's the C. Now moving down to D. D is the most useless tier on a tier list. If you put something on D, you don't feel that it's bad enough to put it in E, which means it doesn't elicit any sort of reaction from you. It's sort of soulless. It's content that doesn't really have any effect. It's just there. I think tier lists and icebergs are a really good representation of this. And Casper Lee, for me, when I look into his eyes, I see nothing, and I never have. That's no hate to him. I'm glad he's made his probably millions at this point. But you know, I feel absolutely nothing towards him. Then when we move down into the E tiers, we get to the band U2 and YouTube Rewind 2018. Although these things are objectively bad, they elicit a strong reaction from you. You know, why is this on my iPod? I hate U2. Why is this on my iPod? Oh, we had to take away dislikes because of this video because everyone hated it so much. So my thing with E is, and why I kind of like it, and you'll see me putting it high on the tier ratings in the tier list iceberg, is because it displays this capability to really feel something deeply towards something and share in the same way as S this sort of collective understanding of something. So yeah, that's the explanation of the tier list. I'm not going to do an explanation of icebergs just because I feel like it's quite self-explanatory. The tip of the iceberg is the most known, the bottom of the iceberg is the least known, and the stuff in the middle is boring. The A tier and the sort of stuff that's just kind of on the iceberg, you know, the basic things, if you will, are just like things that you see a lot, but a little bit more effort's been put into them. So this one, it's just kind of well thought out to me. So S is S, A is A. But you know, they've got a good opinion. Not a good opinion in my opinion, but I like chaos. Over here, we see like everything's pretty good, other than A and D. D, you'll see throughout, D doesn't really move much higher until you go lower down the iceberg. D is a bit of a nothing pick. I personally like a nothing pick, but yeah, D finds itself lower. Usually, you know, if it's something you don't really care about, you're going to put it in D, and that's why D is kind of regularly lower on the board. And E and S, the extreme opinions, find themselves higher. But especially over here, the mid picks, a lot of people like abusing the mid picks, the BC. Again, how can I give an opinion without actually saying anything? Is what it feels like. Yeah, a lot of similar C's and B's, and then we move down. A. I don't personally like A. Explain. So to explain the top tier of the iceberg, I'm using Star Wars characters, and this sort of shows the most common sort of iceberg tier list that you're gonna see. As people just rating media, you know, it's just casual, and they're not really giving any sort of outlandish opinion. They use an S a lot, they use an E a lot. They're not using the mid so much, and these characters that they really like, which is my opinion on A, are going to go here. So, in terms of rating the tiers, you'll see on the old iceberg tier list, in this iceberg, we have S and E in S tier on the tier list at the top of the iceberg. That's sort of to display how much they're being used, and also the things in these tiers are the things that they have the strongest opinions to usually. So, you know, they love Luke Skywalker, Yoda, and Han Solo because they're like fun and nice, and then the Darth Vaders and the Palpatine and the Darth Maul is kind of at the bottom, and they're using E because you really hate those characters. I threw in a little bit of a curveball here for the use of B and C commonly, as sort of like the anti-hero, and people who don't want to give much of an opinion, which is what I'm saying is kind of happening in the top tier of the iceberg, is with a character like an anti-hero or anything that could really represent what an anti-hero stands for, could kind of get misconstrued. So they don't want to say, oh, I like this thing, or this thing's bad, because they don't know where an audience is usually going to sit on those things. So they're going to put it in the mid-tiers. Now, it gets exciting. We move under the iceberg. We venture into the depths. B, iceberg, below iceberg, just below iceberg, just below water. Tier, tailless tier. Feels very rage baity to me. You know, it's still a nothing opinion. We're still not really saying anything here. But the beauty of this one is this is pure engagement bait. This is the engagement bait tier on the tier list, iceberg tier list. You see this one, it's just flipped. So like, oh, my favourite one's the worst. I'm bad. Aren't I naughty? This one could get me in trouble. I won't go any further. With the everything is great and everything is bad. So we sort of move into, you know, the Greek philosophies. You know, very basic, just this thing bad, this thing, everything good, everything bad, you know? The whole nihilism kind of argument over there. I don't like anything. Kind of guys on the far on the far left over there. Explain. At this level in the iceberg, you see just a complete disc cur, not a cur, no cur for the subject matter. And then when you move to the left of the iceberg, you get this sort of like when you see war go up into S tier. You see this sort of sure, whatever, everything's great, I guess. Like, can we really say life's any worse than war? Just, you know, just like nothing opinions. I mean, completely nothing opinions. And although to me this kind of tier list is a E tier tier list, it's very common to say, which is bad. And the point of the iceberg tier list is to say that we shouldn't make iceberg and tier list videos. What? The sort of C tier. You know, we're getting lower on the iceberg now. We're getting a bit wild with it. Everything is mid. You know, you don't see this tape very often. Just because it's kind of the opposite to the just below the iceberg. Because everything's mid. You know, that doesn't drive views. That doesn't drive engagement. You know, everything's mid. Okay, why would I watch the video then? Is what I'd be asking myself at this level. And touching on the iceberg side of it, we're kind of moving down to things you don't see very often. You know, you wouldn't see a tier list YouTuber make, you know, a tier list where he puts everything in mid tier, would you? That's not very exciting. Just as you wouldn't see a iceberg YouTuber put everything in this one. You know, it'd just be very nothing. It'd just be very, oh, okay. Everything's a bit edgy, cool. I'll throw up an explanation. This one really excites me when you move into C and a little bit more below the iceberg. You don't see this one as much. I've probably seen this one a couple of times. I'm not going to give any examples because that's rude and everyone's just trying to make a bad. But the sort of absolute non-opinion of this tier, sort of the no knowledge of the subject matter whatsoever, no care for the subject matter whatsoever.
What's my favourite meal? Don't have a favourite meal. What's my favourite colour? Don't have a favourite colour. What's the best holiday I've ever been on? I've never been on holiday.
Level of the iceberg, and making tier lists out of that, you sort of get to this point where the tiers are used so badly and so boringly that everything might as well just be in B or C. To explain this, I've sort of used music. And so say someone was asked, like, or had these things in a tier list, and they got Mozart, the Beatles, and Guns N' Roses. They're gonna go, oh, Mozart, he's the music guy, right? He's pretty good, I guess. S tier, but realistically, that reaction probably a B tier. You know, it's the reaction that you get to it, kind of linking back to what was in B tier before, a sort of service station of musicians, the Beatles. Sorry. And then you move into the C tier, the kind of shopping basket of musicians, Oasis. Thoughts on that as a big Oasis fan? You don't talk. So I'm back after clearing my card after, yet again, another failure for memory. Just like failure for memory, I don't really remember what I was saying last time. I think I kind of said that Oasis was the shopping basket of music, and the Beatles was the service station of music. Again, I'm giving an opinion which things in this point of the iceberg don't usually do. This tier of the iceberg sort of represents like the Mr. Beast. If he made a tier list video, he'd use the tiers in a very just, I don't know, he doesn't really have the time to engage with the media effectively. He doesn't really have time to really look at Mozart's composition and decide whether that's better and more influential than the Beatles, or if Kanye's comments and his things recently in his career are enough to move him down into E tier, even though he made great work in his past, or if Nirvana's legacy was tainted by the choices of the lead singer because he doesn't have the time, or a lot of the people who are making these tier lists don't really care. And when we get into the middle of the iceberg, we sort of move into this lack of care. The oil for the content slop. You'll see I talk about the things in the upper tiers, the S tier of the top of the iceberg, the sort of tier list that you see the most, and they're not that bad. And then you sort of move into the A tier tier list and just on the iceberg. I'm saying they're not that bad. And then you move into the E tier, and I'll get to that later, but I'm also saying they're not that bad. It represents this sort of this middle ground of just absolute slop content that you'll see a lot. It's very skippable. Which brings me to my point on that point of the iceberg. And like, we're at B tier of the iceberg now. This tier, if you're watching a long form tier list video or a long form iceberg video, you'd be very likely to skip it. Well, the stuff at the bottom and the stuff at the top, you're sort of making the connections, like I said, and at the top, and you know sort of what they're talking about in these cases, and you want to learn a little bit more. And then the stuff at the bottom, you're like, this, I've never heard of this before, let me look into this. Well, this represents this sort of lack of care, and sort of, you know, the nothing happens of tier lists. Okay, this is where it starts to get boring. You see, D,
What do you like doing in your spare time? In your spare time? What subject?
the titan of boring in tier list videos. You know, no one really uses it. No one really likes old D. Just as no one really likes this part of an iceberg, I feel. If you're skipping along for an iceberg video, you're very likely to skip this part. Just because, you know, the top part of the iceberg, you're kind of going, I've heard of that. That's really interesting. That's like, you're making those connections. You're sort of going, I've kind of heard of that thing. That seems interesting. And it gets to this place in D, and on this part of the iceberg, and you sort of go, you know, I want to get to the more interesting things over here in E and the depths. You know, because this is just waffle at this point. We're probably at, in an average iceberg video, we're probably at the 40-minute mark by now. I hope this video is at the 40-minute mark by now. And I've tried to display that in the type of tier lists you'll find, you know, just very boring. Like, I like this one thing, you know, the bad thing is good. You know, like, okay, man, nice. The good thing is good and everything else is bad. You know, it doesn't really drive engagement. I do quite like this. This is sort of how I act a lot of the time. If I had to put my tier list, iceberg tier list video into a tier list, I'd probably put D and this part of the iceberg in S tier and everything else in E tier, just to be, you know, controversial. That would drive engagement, and then I'd stick to it. I'd double down. So yeah, little explanation. When you get to this part of the iceberg, you sort of reach this again, this lack of care in the C tier, and you're not engaging with the content enough to wrong one. Can you switch to the other one? Thanks. You're not engaging with the content enough to really be critical of it. You've probably engaged with one part of the overall content. So in this example, music, you've probably engaged with just music in general, and you've heard a lot of people saying this one thing is really bad, or this load of things down here is really bad. Sorry, I don't know why I'm saying load of things. There's only one person down here. But you're kind of very narrow-minded, and when you get to this part of the tier list, maybe some people are tuning back in after skipping through the boring bits of the iceberg tier list, and you might be skipping through this video and get to this part and be a little bit confused, and that's okay. But you see, with music at the top, so someone in this tier would use the tiers very aggressively, would be very extreme, would use S tier a lot, would use the E tier a lot, but it'd be very biased. It kind of creates this idea that my opinion is great and I love this thing, and this other thing is absolutely terrible, and I hate it. So it's not, it shows a lack of engagement with the subject, because in this example of music and Taylor Swift, nothing else, I couldn't think of anything else to make a point about this one. With music, you listen to it and you're like, you don't have much of an opinion on it, but you're like, music's good as a concept, but then you've sort of engaged enough with it to go, people don't really like Taylor Swift, and I don't know, like, I feel like to say Taylor Swift is the worst thing ever, you have to have a lack of engagement with music. Obviously she's done very well for herself, so she's not doing everything wrong, you know what I mean? She's not that much of an eater. But again, I don't disagree with this sort of view on the world and view on making tier lists. I think it's, again, when you get to the bottom of the iceberg, it's this sort of horseshoe theory where it's both of the extremes of the iceberg are a little bit entertaining, maybe lower on the iceberg for sort of the wrong reasons. We'll get into that with the later explanations. But yeah, I think the music Taylor Swift example really explains this level of the iceberg quite well. Tier list. Iceberg, tier list. Tier. I'm kind of flip-flopping over which one's my favourite at the moment, between D and E. But the thing is about E is, this were an iceberg video. If someone's gonna, you know, just really skim through it, just, oh, fuck this, let's just get to the interesting part, kind of skipping along the timeline. This is where a lot of people would just start. They just jump in right here and go, this seems really interesting, let's just... But it also... this place in iceberg videos kind of get to that point where it's like, no one's ever heard of that. To the point where I could just make things up and put them on an iceberg, you know, just like... Or just like one guy made a Wikipedia article, and that's where this sort of place in the iceberg goes. But tier list wise, everything is bad. So, just like an iceberg video on a sort of morbid subject, everything over here would be horrendous. And I've sort of represented that in the tier lists we've got here. So if you look over here on the far left, we don't make tier list videos. That would be horrible. That means that no. This doesn't mean anything. Stop making tier list videos. This doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. This doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. Stop watching tier list videos. So my memory card kind of ran out, but I had a lot to say about E lower on the iceberg. I think I kind of ended on the fact that this is the one on the far left is le bad, because no iceberg, no tier list videos, and you kind of don't see this sort of everything that's good is just good, and everything that's bad is just bad, and the opposite. It kind of on the iceberg goes down to the, ooh, that's weird, you know, that piques my interest sort of thing. You know, but my memory card ran out of space, so who knows? Explain. Engage with content on your own, make up your own opinion, stop watching iceberg videos, learn about things for yourself. So down here we sort of get to the very depths of the iceberg, where this is completely made up. No one has ever done this before other than me. This ranking of tiers, or sort of, we'll explain, but has never been done before. This is completely just me throwing about tiers in random places, just as when you get to this place on an iceberg video, it sort of loses all competence. We're about an hour and a half into a video, you know, an hour-ish, and no one's really watching that long. You know, we have terrible attention spans, and you know, we've clicked off the video by now, or it's just pure second monitor content and it just doesn't matter. So yeah, just completely made up on Wikipedia. There's like maybe noted somewhere, and it. I hope this is. I hope we're at the 40-minute mark right now, and you've skipped to this part and you have no context of explain. So we're at the end of the tier list, the tier list, iceberg, tier list, iceberg, and we get to the bottom. I probably already mentioned that this is sort of like the randomly generated tier, and maybe in icebergs especially, you get to this point and it's like one guy on Reddit has posted this, and the use of the tiers in this part are, like I said, just completely randomly generated. But to put them and to make up this story, that probably a Reddit story that's been made up, or it feels more honest, and it shows an engagement with the like, I've completely made this up, but it shows an engagement with a tier list, and an understanding of tier lists, to know that this is like the most random version of a tier list, and to have like A in, where on earth, A and E, like why? You know, it sort of becomes kind of an art at this point, and subversion, and making things up, like storytelling, and a real engagement with the subject matter to make something like this, which you not only do you not see in tier lists in general, but you don't see in content in general nowadays, and especially like very mainstream content and a lot of background content and icebergs and tier lists. You see sort of people just reading off Wikipedia and people just making videos for the sake of making videos. I have to put another video out. You don't. You can care, you can make something that you genuinely care about, and your audience will know that you genuinely care about that thing, because you'll have this take that no one else has had. And I think as YouTube's becoming more of a industry and a job over the last 5 years now, this has been normalised, and it's been like no, it's okay, like I understand some content creators, it's the livelihood, it's what they do, they have to sort of put out this video, and I'll watch it, I'll put it in the background, but it not only demotes you to a tier of content slop as a creator, but it kind of demeans your audience, and it kind of makes them dumber. It means that you're pushing them, because they care about you, to engage with this anti-intellectual slop that comes out of a tier list or an iceberg. And that's the reason I made the tier list iceberg, because it's ridiculous. It doesn't have a reason, it doesn't have a point, although I've tried to force reason and point onto it. A lot of it probably doesn't make sense. And I have a few YouTubers that I used to watch that I started to get like this with, where I don't have a reason to watch anymore. I don't have a reason to care anymore. And I feel like this with a lot of content, other than this like sort of like pushed parasocial relationship with the creator, that, yeah, it's not my fault for watching them for so long and for enjoying the content, but these parasocial relationships aren't born out of just straight going to that YouTube and going, I like this person, most of the time anyway. It comes from, I really like this guy's content, I really like his opinions, I really like his attitude, and yeah, and then they kind of keep making videos, and then they demote themselves to the slot because they feel like they've got to put out a video. You don't have to put out a video. It may be your main stream of revenue, but there's ways around this. There's people make Patreons for a reason, you know, where they have that monthly income, so they can focus more on the content, they can upload when they want. And I do support Patreons of these creators, and I think rather than, I'm going to talk in the dark, I might not, you never know, the laptop will turn back on. But yeah, the almost thesis statement of this video is that stop making the slop. It doesn't mean anything, it makes your audience dumber, it makes you look dumber, and I don't know, maybe make real videos again. Make YouTube great. And I think on a greater point, you don't only see this on YouTube, you see this in everything, and this video is sort of a representation for my current nihilism towards what I feel is the state of art, and art meaning just like the visual arts, where it's kind of stagnating in certain places because people need to make another painting, people need to do another photograph, people need to make more music, are you going to get left behind? And it sort of speeds up the rate of production, and Kerr goes out of the window, but people still want Kerr, and I truly believe that. I truly believe that not everyone wants content, and if people make the active choice to slow down the production of art and not just put things out because you feel like you have to, it'll start to create this effect where we see better art, and then that pushes people to take the time and make better art in general, rather than just making a tier list, making a painting, because everything's so fast now. I feel like I felt this a lot, just in education and going into university and the working world in an art field. I feel like the teachers know that's the state of the working art world now, and push you as a student where you should be experimenting and you should be thinking and you should be trying new things, throwing shit against the wall. You're being pushed to just make something else, just make another thing, make another thing, make another thing. What's popular right now, make that thing, not what do you care about, what do you want to do, what's your S tier, and really, rather than putting it in S tier and forgetting about it, focus on it, attack that thing, interrogate that thing. And there is great artists that are still doing that, and we've got to champion those people and push to the side the mid tiers and the no care content and the no care art. And I'm not saying that the people who are making these like quick, pushy, just nothing content and nothing art don't care. I feel like they are just a product of the current state of art, and just calling art content, you know what I mean? Like, YouTube videos used to be skits, and I know it's a low art as opposed to a high art, but it's still an art. And I feel like you see a lot in movies where it's just complete, this thing did well, let's get the next great thing out. That's been going on for so long now that it's just so normal to treat art like this, and it shouldn't be. Probably heard that before. So that's the whole iceberg tier list of tiers. Tier list. That's the explanation of the tier list, iceberg tier list. I don't care to explain any further past what I probably explained a fair bit by now. But I hope this is the last tier list or iceberg video you'll ever have to watch. Or you could just skip to the end and understand completely any tier list or iceberg video without watching it, so that people can make real content and cannot make tier list or iceberg videos anymore. I think that'd be great. Unless Joe Rogan makes an iceberg or a tier list video, find new ways to rate things. I stole these tier lists, and as you can see from the low quality, because I refuse to use the tier list making website. How can one company have a monopoly over tier list making? I thought that was quite egregious. But yeah, thank you for watching the first episode of MMA. I hope there's more to come. Thank you, I've been your host, Jack Bradshaw. Goodbye.